All right, guys, so you asked for it. We are going to start with our camo painting tutorial. So here is the PSA Gen 3 AR-10 hanging in the painting tree. So we've got it all masked off. We've got it de-lubed. We've got it sprayed down with some carburetor cleaner, which is what I personally use, just to get all the oily residue and stuff off of the surface. And you can see that it is kind of a dull matte surface now, and that is just where all the lubricant has been washed away from the surface. All of the surfaces I don't want paint on have been masked off down to the muzzle and into and there's the trigger as well as the mag well. So anything you don't want paint on, you definitely need to get some tape on it. I have pulled the handguard off so that way we can get a good coat on the barrel assembly. And here is the handguard, so we'll paint it initially, and then once these get painted, we will put the handguard back on the rifle and then do the finish camo pattern. We've got our accessories over here on the table. So our 2 scope caps, we're going to do 1 magazine and our bipod. Now for me, as you noticed, you may be asking, well, why didn't you just put the scope caps on the scope and just paint it that way? And I can tell you that most scope caps suck, and they are not airtight, so you can get overspray in there and get that on your lenses. So for me personally, I just mask those off and then just paint the caps separately, and then I can do the camo on those just as well on the table as I can on the gun. So here is the camo paint that I use. This is just the stuff from Walmart. So I use 4 different colors. So here's a deep forest green, that one there. Here is camo sand. I'll let you guys see the numbers on those if you're interested in these. There's an earth brown, so a darker brown, and then here is an army green, so a lighter green as well. Now for me, I start off with a base of deep forest green, and then I will put these other 3 colors as the patterning around or on the gun itself. So kind of some tips here before we get going, just stuff that I have found over the years. And for me personally, the main thing is, don't psych yourself out. Do not think that this is going to be a perfect job, because if you do that, you're never going to get started on it, and you'll never do it to begin with. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You don't want it perfect. You want your camo to be random as all get out, and just to make it yours, you know. Another thing is whenever you pull your gun out of your safe, if you're doing this in summer, make sure once you bring your gun outside that it's the same temperature as outside, because if not, you're going to get sweating, and that sweating is not going to allow the paint to adhere properly. So one other thing about this camo paint here is it works really well on plastic. So that's kind of another reason why I use it, and it's cheap. So, but let me reposition the camera, and I'll go through and get our first coat on here and just kind of let you see how that works, guys. All right, so we got our camera repositioned here, and you can see the rifle there hanging as well as the handguard. And like I said, I'm going to start off with the deep forest green. So I'm going to do 3 coats. I'm not going to make you guys wait through all 3 of these, but I am going to coat this at least, I like to do at least 3 base coats of the base color, just to give you a little bit of a cushion and a little bit of scratch abrasion resistance. So the cool thing about using just rattle can is it does give you a really cool weathered used look, especially when you're done and you've used the rifle a little bit. So that's one of the neat things. But let me go ahead and I'll show you what to do as far as what I do. Now, we're right or wrong, this is just what I do, guys. But one thing to keep in mind is you don't want to over cover on the first couple of coats. You basically just want to give it a skim coat, something just to get some paint on the surface, okay? So no turning back now, guys. You don't have to cover the entire gun on the first coat. That's one big mistake that a lot of guys make. And that's how you're going to end up getting paint running. So you're basically just skim coating it just to get kind of a base on the rifle. And that's all I'm doing. Just enough to get a little bit of color on here to start with. Now the cool thing about doing this in summer is it doesn't really take long for this stuff to dry. So we're going to go ahead and we'll let that be our first coat. go ahead and spray a good coat on our handguard. The same thing, you don't have to get it covered all on the first coat. So you just want it covered. That's it. You just want a little bit of a splatter coat, I guess you could say. And I'm also going to do the accessories as well. So just going to give a quick coat on those. I guess you could kind of think of it as like a primer coat. So don't expect to get full coverage on the first one. The more time you take with this, especially with like your taping off or something to that effect, or any of those steps, the better your end product is going to be. So that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. And then, guys, it's nothing more than just waiting. So we're going to wait for the paint to kind of tack up a little bit, and then we're going to hit it again. All right, guys, so I didn't subject you to the other two coats, but this is going to be the final coat on the rifle and the handguard. So this is going to be our base coat again. So I'm just looking to go ahead and finish coloring it in. You know, anything that might be still a little bit showing through. Main thing is you're looking for thin coats. I would rather have, you know, 5 thin coats than I would just maybe 2 or 3 really thick coats. Coverage seems to be a lot better when you do it this way, just from my personal experience. It seems to last longer, and the finish looks a lot better too when you get done. Always make sure that you're spraying in multiple angles as well, just so that you get all the different curvature in and around the rifle itself. But this looks pretty good. It's turning out well. Once you get this base coat down and it dries for a little bit, you can start to lay down your camo pattern. So that looks really good there. And we hit the inside of this stock here a little bit. And notice I did take the rubber portion off of the stock as well. You can paint some of the rubber. It doesn't last very good. It will come off, but it's not a big deal. Just kind of be mindful of it. So that doesn't look too bad. So let me turn the camera around here, and I'm going to go ahead and finish out the handguard. Same thing. Nice big even coat all the way around this one. Now the thing, once you get like areas that, like this, with this venting in this M-LOK rail, you want to make sure that you definitely go at different angles, so that way you don't miss any of the coming and goings of the handguard. Get in all the nooks, just so that way it's even and the coloring is the same all the way across. So that looks pretty good. So let me go ahead and pause the camera, because I will have to put this back on the rifle once all this gets dried, and then we are going to go for our final camo pattern. I'll show you how I do that. All right, guys, so we got our final coat put on, got our handguard torqued back on it as well. Now it's just a question of getting our camo pattern stuck on here. And this is where you just make it your own, guys. I mean, when you're doing this, you can find whatever you want in your environment to make this fit you. So for me, I have been using the same bunch of sticks for probably, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years. But basically is what I'll do is I'll just lay it towards the gun, and then just take my rattle can and then just spray across it. And you're just going to do that in various different positions on the gun itself until you get what you want, basically. And then you're going to alternate colors as well. So for the first color, I'll start out with the earth brown. Let me grab that one here. And one thing I do want to remind you guys is when you're doing these, the little nozzles on here, make sure that you clean these periodically when you're doing this, so that way you don't get splatter. Just some carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner just to clean that off, and then a little pin or a paper clip just to make sure that nozzle is clean, and it'll help that paint to kind of come out a lot more freely. And then, like I said, you just, you know, just kind of go through it and start putting it on. The cool thing about this is there's no wrong way, guys. I mean, what might look good to you may not look good to somebody else, and that's okay. The cool thing about it is it's yours. So if you don't like it, one other benefit to this technique is you can always paint back over it and then just do it again. So you just do whatever. I mean, I'll usually do this until I get color, you know, somewhat evenly distributed across the rifle itself, and just kind of stripe it up a little bit, and, you know, so on and so forth. The main thing is that you don't want to do it in any kind of an order. Make it as random as possible. That's what makes it look pretty good, I think. So as you're going through, just make it as off the wall as far as the patterning goes as you possibly can. So by doing that, you're able to sort of recreate what you might find in a particular environment. So this is just what I've done personally over the years, and I really like the way it turns out. I mean, it's kind of different, and to do one of these, it's cheap. It's super cheap. This paint doesn't cost a whole lot. Tape is cheap, and it makes the rifle yours. So, or gun, or handgun, or whatever you decide you want to camo. So it is yours to do with what you will. So that's kind of the, let me lower the camera here so you can see the muzzle of the gun. So, and I'm just doing the same thing down here also. There, that's pretty good. And then I will swing the camera around, and then I'll do the same thing on the accessories as well. So I'll just take and, you know, just kind of lay my sticks across it and just start to paint. You know, just make it as crazy and as wild as you possibly can. Then once those dries, I'll kind of change up the direction of them and then just start with another color. So I'm going to let that stuff dry for a few minutes. I'll pause the camera, and then we'll get back with one of the other colors. Okay, so that's tacked up pretty good. I'm going to go for my last color here. Now you guys may like the way this looks here on your rifle, and you may stop with only one other color on your base color, and that's perfectly fine. You can do it however you choose to do it. You know, again, make this your camo job. Now I'm going to finish off with the army green. I don't think I'm going to use the sand color on this rifle, just to kind of make it different from some of my other ones that I've done here at the hide. But then I'm just going to do the exact same thing. The main thing is to make sure that whatever you're using as your camo template, you know, alternate it. Do not make it go the same way as your other patterns have gone. So same with this, just kind of go on. And the fun part is seeing it when you get done. That looks pretty good there. I like that. Best thing about this is it only has to look good to you. So if you like the way it looks, that's all that matters. But do not psych yourself out. The fact of the matter is that it's not going to be perfect. It will never be perfect. It will never be like a store-bought, you know, camo job. And to be honest with you, I don't want that. I don't want, you know, it to look like everybody else's. This, I guarantee you, no one else is going to have this same camo pattern on their rifle. I guarantee it. So with that being said, I'm going to let this one dry. let's turn the camera around here at the accessory table, and we'll get the bipod. We'll throw some army green on it, like we did the other. And on our magazine, our scope caps, kind of like that there. We'll let that dry. I'll flip the bipod over, I'll flip the magazine over, and I'll kind of tilt those scope caps a little bit. We'll hit them on the other side, and then we'll get them put back on the rifle, and we'll just let it dry, guys. And one kind of final tip, I guess, that I could give you is that once you get this done and you have completed your camo pattern, you've got it to where you like it, you know you're not going to be changing anything else. This is pretty good. I kind of like what it looks like now. And you'll notice that it can kind of feel a little tacky to you. Take and hang the rifle. I like hanging my rifles to paint them. I don't like laying them down on the ground, so that way I can do all sides at one time. You don't have to flip it. I don't know, I just like that better. But if you want to lay it down on a surface and paint it, that's fine too. But once you get this done, if you get that tacky, sticky feeling of this type of spray paint, hang it in the sun for a couple of hours, and it will really take care of that, and it won't be tacky at all. So kind of keep that in mind. But I'm gonna let this finish drying. We'll get our accessories put on there, and we'll take a look at the finished product, guys. All right, guys, so here's our final product, and I think it turned out pretty slick, man. As you can see, we got our camo pattern here, and it looks really, really good. One thing that I like to do, as I mentioned with my little weed pattern that I put on most all of my guns, is that's from, you know, my area. So you can use something that's indicative to your area to make your camo pattern, and that really makes the rifle yours for sure, and the places that you shoot. So that's kind of a cool little touch that you guys can do. The scope, you know, if you end up making it to where, you know, oh man, I may want a better scope on my rifle at some point, or a different optic. Cool thing about using a pattern like this that's not store-bought, that's completely random, is if I take this off and put another scope on it, I can just paint that one up and it will still match, because none of this goes with each other. You know what I mean? It's completely a random pattern. So I probably will upgrade the scope on this at some point. So the only thing I'll do is just pop this off, go ahead and pre-camo my new scope, put it back on here, torque it down, and we're ready to rock and roll again. So we did manage to do one magazine, so it kind of fits the pattern with that as well. I think it really turned out good, guys. And you can see the parts on the rifle that I did go ahead and tape off. I removed all that. There's our Schmid 2-stage. Can't wait to get this out on the range and see what it's going to do, how it's going to perform with that new trigger in it as well. And I do got the suppressor on it, so that's a pretty cool touch. We'll see how it does suppressed. I forgot to mention, you know, like as far as tape goes, I just use regular masking tape. Now, one thing I would advise is you can get this at the auto parts store. This is 1/4-inch masking tape, and it is extremely useful for masking off small parts like around your scopes and things like that you don't want paint to get on. And it takes a lot less time than trying to cut out, you know, larger tape. So it's worth the $5 or $6 to get you a roll of this stuff, and it lasts quite a while too. There's quite a bit on there, so that's really cool too. I did put a limb saver butt pad on this MOE stock. I'm really interested to see how that does. That was another reason why I didn't paint the back side of this stock as well. I took that pad off. But nonetheless, guys, I appreciate y'all hanging through this video. I hope it helps. Probably the biggest takeaway is don't be scared to start it. If you psych yourself out before you even get the first coat on, you're done. You'll never do it. And I know the first one is always the roughest, just because you're like, oh my gosh, I may mess up my rifle or something like that. But if it's a rifle that you like, that you know you're going to keep, just do it. Just paint it. I mean, who cares? It's going to be yours. And the cool thing about, you know, this, it's cheap enough. Just paint over it and do it again if you don't like your pattern. So appreciate you all watching. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Is this something you think you might try on one of your rifles? I'd really love to hear about it. Please like, share, and subscribe, guys. It really helps the channel. As always, shoot straight.